One quiet night in a small house on the outskirts of Chiang Mai, the dim light from a table lamp cast two shadows sitting across from each other, Koy and John, her foreign husband of more than 10 years. But tonight wasn't like any other night. The atmosphere felt as if the air had stopped moving, something cold and silent slipping through the house without a sound. Koy lifted her cup of tea for a sip, but the taste that touched her tongue was bitter, like the taste of a lie about to be exposed. Koy. John spoke softly, his voice low, thin, like wind brushing through bamboo. We need to talk about something important. Koy gave a faint smile, but her eyes tightened. Is it about work? Or the stress you've had for weeks? John looked away. He reached into his pocket, took out his phone, and placed it on the table. The screen was black, but it felt as if someone else's shadow reflected inside it. There's something I've been hiding for far too long. Koy's heart dropped, and the silence was so heavy she could hear her own heartbeat, pounding like a war drum. 15 years ago. John began, his voice trembling as if he were stepping off a cliff. Koy slowly set her teacup down, her hands trembling without her noticing, because the words 15 years ago felt like they were dragging another woman into the space between them. I had a relationship with a Filipino woman named Maria. Silence, a silence like someone had switched off the entire world. Koy said nothing, but pain shot up her spine, as if a thin blade were slicing through her heart quietly. John inhaled sharply, like a man about to confess the greatest sin of his life. Yesterday, Maria contacted me. He lifted his head to look at Koy, and the eyes that once radiated warmth now looked like a deep, merciless void. She said that I have a child with her. Koy's world shattered, soundlessly, instantly, as if it simply ceased to exist. She stared at her husband, the way one would stare at a stranger she once held every night, but who now stood on an entirely different planet. And why are you telling me only now? Koy forced the lump in her throat down. John avoided her eyes. The child has grown up now. He wants to meet his father, before it's too late. The phrase "before it's too late" sent a chill down her spine. It didn't sound like a simple reunion. It sounded like something darker was hiding behind it. You're going to meet them? Her voice was soft, but inside her chest, she felt an iron hammer pounding repeatedly. John's stillness was the answer. Koy stood up slowly. She walked to the window and opened it, letting the cold night wind rush in. The icy air struck her face, reminding her she was still alive, though her heart felt on the verge of dying. 10 years we'd been together. What was it to you, John? Her voice trembled, uncertain whether she was angrier or more heartbroken. John approached her, but she stepped back, as if he were a stranger in his own home. Koy. I'm sorry. Stop. Her voice rose unintentionally, like a drowning person trying to scream for someone to hear. You ran from your past for 15 years, and now it's back, but why am I the one who has to suffer for it? John bowed his head, his fists clenched so tightly the knuckles reddened. He really wants to meet me. Maria said the boy might be sick, and he wants to know the truth before. Koy moved slowly, like a robot whose joints were breaking apart. The word sick stabbed her like a cold needle, and John wasn't done. Before he runs out of time. The entire house felt like it had been stored inside a freezer. Koy's breath staggered. Maybe this wasn't just about the past. Maybe it was a shadow returning with a catastrophe attached. Koy turned to face her husband fully. Her eyes were red, but not from tears, from fear, from anger, From a pain swirling into a black storm that threatened to tear her heart apart. You've already decided, haven't you, that you're going to meet them? John didn't answer, and his silence was the clearest answer of all. Koy nodded slowly, as if cutting pieces of her heart away 1 millimeter at a time. Then listen to me. She inhaled deeply, mustering the last of her strength to say the next words. If you step back into the life of that woman, and that child, even one step, I will cut you out of mine. Immediately. John flinched. Koy stared at him, her eyes dry, which was far scarier, because they were the eyes of someone who had begun to accept that love truly can die. After the ultimatum Koy had spoken, the entire house fell into a silence so deep they could hear each other breathe, but this silence wasn't peace, it was a curse hanging above their heads, pressing down on both of them. John stood in the middle of the kitchen, his expression like someone who had just been shot by words. No blood visible, only a slow, deep ache seeping out through his eyes. Koy. I want us to talk about this rationally. He tried to speak calmly, but the tension in the room made every syllable tremble. Rationally? Koy let out a small laugh, a laugh without a shred of happiness. It was the sound of a heart shattered so completely that only hard shards remained. She turned her back to him, and walked toward the counter to grab a glass of water, but her hand shook so violently the glass nearly slipped from her grasp. If you're looking for logic, go get it from that woman. Koy spoke while still facing away, because I'm not the one who needs to explain the sin you committed. She tilted her head back slightly, holding in the tears burning behind her eyes, tears she refused to shed in front of the man who broke her. John tried to step closer, but Koy raised a hand to stop him, without even turning around. Don't come near me. Her voice was soft, but heavy like chains tightening around his throat. Koy. I didn't mean to hide this. John's voice trembled. He reached for the phone on the table, and opened the most recent message from Maria. On the screen was a simple English text, but sharp enough to cut like a razor. John. He's sick, he wants to see you, he deserves the truth before it's too late. Koy glanced at the message for only a second, before turning away again. That was enough. She didn't want to know more. Every word was a needle sinking deeper into her heart. The child is sick? Her voice cracked, as if she didn't want an answer. Yes. Maria said, the doctors aren't sure how much time he has left. The words "not much time" drained the air from the entire house, leaving only emptiness, thick enough to choke on. The phrase "sick child" made Koy's heart tremble, not only out of sympathy, but because of something darker, something no woman should ever be forced to feel. A terrifying guilt, the guilt of thinking, I hate this situation, but the child is innocent. She wanted to hate him, she wanted to hate Maria, she wanted to hate everything that tore her family apart, but she couldn't, and that made it hurt worse than anything. Koy collapsed onto the sofa, as if all the strength in her body had been drained. John quietly sat down, keeping a distance between them, afraid that getting too close might break her even more. Koy. I want to tell you everything, if you're ready to hear it. His voice trembled, because he knew no explanation could fix what he had done. Koy didn't speak. She wiped her tears gently, tears she didn't want him to see, but couldn't hold back anymore. Talk. She whispered, tell me everything, from the beginning, up to the day she contacted you again. John closed his eyes tightly, as if he were forcing himself to relive a past he had buried for 15 long years, 15 years ago. Maria and I, he began, his voice like a man confessing his sins before an invisible judge. But Koy had no idea that John's past was not a simple mistake. It was darker than she imagined, and some truths would change her life forever. Koy sat motionless on the sofa. Her slender fingers clutched the hem of her shirt so tightly her knuckles turned white, but her gaze stayed fixed on the floor, as if she were afraid that if she looked up, she would see a truth that would shatter her heart even more than it already was. John sat a short distance away, but the distance between their hearts now felt like separate sides of the planet. He began to speak slowly, as if he were opening an old grave and peeling away the dirt one layer at a time. 15 years ago, I went to work in Manila for 3 months. Back then, I was still the kind of man who never thought about consequences. He lowered his head, hands clasped tightly together, like a sinner confessing before God. Maria was 10 years younger than me. She worked at a small bar near where I stayed. I was lonely, and she looked like someone who needed something to hold on to. It started as a one-night mistake. Koy closed her eyes, but the image of a dark bar, shadows of strangers holding each other in dim light, sprang into her mind whether she wanted it or not. It felt like an ice-cold hand wrapped around her heart and squeezed. John swallowed, as if there was something even harder to say than what happened in bed. After that, it wasn't just one night. Koy opened her eyes slowly. They were red and swollen, but frighteningly calm. I was with her for a while, John continued, in a way that I shouldn't have been. The word with stabbed Koy deeper than slept with. Because with meant attachment, not just a drunken slip. You gave her hope? Koy asked softly, but the edge in her voice was sharp as a razor blade. John shook his head quickly. I never meant to, Koy. It was a time in my life when I was lost. I admit that, but when my contract ended, I went back home, and I left without telling her anything. Koy went still, so still it was as if her heartbeat stopped for a moment. To leave without a word was to abandon someone in a sea of unanswered questions, and now that abandoned hope had returned in the form of a child, the past knocking on the door. Then about 2 weeks ago, John continued, Maria emailed me. She said, their child is sick. He's not responding to normal treatment. The doctors suspect it might be linked to something genetic. From the father's side. Koy's breathing hitched. The phrase from the father's side was so heavy it made her feel like the floor beneath her had tilted. And then? Koy asked, her voice shaking, not only from anger now, but from a rising fear she couldn't name. Maria said the boy asked about his father. He asked why his father never contacted him, why his father never loved him, why his father abandoned him since the day he was born. Each question stabbed into Koy's chest, one after another. Even though she wasn't the one being asked, it felt like she was being forced to share the burden of his sin. Without ever having done anything wrong, Koy lifted her hands to cover her ears. She didn't want to hear any more, but John's voice still reached her, slipping through like a sound she couldn't outrun. Koy, I know I was wrong, and I won't force you to accept it, but that boy, he's running out of time. Koy flinched, as if she'd been yanked out of some dark tunnel of thought. Running out of time? John nodded. Maria said, the doctors told her to monitor him closely. He's been showing strange symptoms, and they don't know how long he has left. Koy clenched her fists. She didn't want to feel sorry for that child. She didn't want to, but the part of her that was still human had never left her. But there's something else, John added, hesitating. something very important, that I haven't told you yet." Koy fell silent, as if she were waiting for lightning to strike her head again. John lifted his eyes slowly toward her, his expression that of a man about to reveal the deepest, darkest secret he'd ever buried. His voice shook, and what he was about to say made Koy's heart beat in a strange, frantic rhythm. Maria said, "The boy isn't completely sure that he's only my son." The world seemed to stop turning. Koy's mouth fell open, but no sound came out, because this sentence was the beginning of a new storm, one that could turn out to be even worse than the illness of that child. Koy's breath faltered, as if the world had stopped in midair. John's words kept echoing in her ears over and over. "That boy isn't sure he's only my son." One single sentence shattered an already broken heart into hundreds more pieces. Her legs felt weak, but she refused to collapse in front of him. She didn't want him to see just how deeply she was hurt. She drew a long breath, as if swallowing a lump of iron. "What do you mean?" "Not sure?" Her voice was cold, so cold even she was startled by it. John looked away, as though he were digging up a sin carved deeper than any scar. "Maria said that. Back then, her life was a mess. Her father was sick. She had to work both day and night, and I wasn't there all the time." Koy bit down so hard on her lip that it bled, because what he was about to say meant this secret would not end simply. "So you're saying she was with someone else too, right?" John said nothing. His silence was the answer. Koy laughed. When nothing was funny, her laugh was soft, but sharp, like a blade slicing the skin. "You know something?" She spoke slowly. "I've been trying to tell myself that what happened 15 years ago came before you met me, that I should be able to forgive it, that I should be able to understand. But now—" She turned to meet his eyes she once thought were gentle, now filled with a deep, black shadow. "It's no longer just about the past, it's a problem that's about to destroy our future. Cracks that only grow deeper." "So what do you believe?" Koy asked. "Do you believe that boy is your son, or someone else's?" John couldn't answer, because he truly didn't know. "Koy, I really don't know. I don't know what to believe. I don't know who's telling the truth, what was real back then, and what she kept from me." He shook his head weakly. "It's a mess. And I'm scared." The word "scared" made Koy narrow her eyes, not out of sympathy, but because it sounded so small, compared to what she was feeling. "You're scared, and how do you think I'm supposed to feel?" Koy stood up, but it felt like her heart was being torn clean in half. "I'd been with you almost 10 years. I gave you everything, my heart, my life, my trust, and what do I get in return?" Her voice shook. "Uncertainty, not knowing what you did, with who, a child who might be yours. Or might not, and me, what am I to you, exactly?" A truth more painful than the secret. John lifted his head. His eyes were bloodshot, like a man who had just lost something irreplaceable. "Koy, I never wanted us to feel this way. I never wanted to hurt you. But right now, I don't know what to do. That boy needs the truth. Maria needs an answer, and I don't know how to say no." Koy went quiet. She didn't cry, because the pain had gone past the point where tears could carry it. "Fine." Her voice was soft, but steady. "Then go. Go to him. Go find the truth. Go find the child who may or may not be yours." John flinched. "Koy," she turned to him one more time, but this time, in Koy's eyes, there was no love left at all. But remember this, if you take even a single step toward being that boy's father, she spoke slowly, like hammering a nail into a coffin, don't come back. As my husband. John's face went pale. As if all the blood in his body had drained away, because this time her words were not a threat, they were a sentence, and only now did he realize the truth he chose to reveal might take away far more than he ever imagined. After the sentence Koy delivered, cold, sharp, final, the whole house fell silent, as if time itself had stopped. John looked at her, the way a man looks at the woman he loves most, walking away from him step by painful step, even though her feet had never moved. Koy leaned against the table, her hands trembling slightly, but she made sure not to show it. She would not let anyone see her weakness, especially not the man who caused it. Koy. Don't say that, I still love you. John reached out to touch her arm, but she pulled back, as if his touch were fire, and she had already been burned enough. Love. She let out a dry, brittle laugh, a sound like shattering glass. Your love is fragile, isn't it? It only took 15 years for you to remember. You got another woman pregnant. John clenched his fists. He wanted to explain, to tell her how sorry he was, but Koy didn't want excuses. Every word he spoke only deepened the wound. A night that never sleeps. Koy turned and walked upstairs. She didn't look back, even when she heard John calling after her. She closed the bedroom door, slam. Like sealing a coffin inside her chest, she dropped onto the bed, staring at the ceiling that looked darker than usual, even with the lights still on. Everything spun in her head, John's face, the Filipino woman's face, the child who might be his. Or even if he wasn't, he was still a wound carving itself into her marriage. Koy hugged her pillow tightly. The tighter she held it, the emptier she felt. It was like hugging broken memories that had already turned to dust. Why now? Why did it have to come back now? She whispered to herself, but no answer came, while Koy cried silently upstairs. John sat alone downstairs, in the dim living room, where he could barely see his own face. He opened his phone, and reread Maria's messages, again and again. His hands shook, not because he wanted to run back to his past, but because guilt, fear, and the weight of what he abandoned had finally caught up with him. A new message popped up. John. I'm at the hospital. He asked for you again. His condition is unstable. John felt his heart drop, as if an invisible hand had wrapped around it, and squeezed. The boy might not survive, but he hesitated, because if he went, he might lose Koy forever. John opened a drawer and took out an old photo, a picture of him and Koy on their wedding day, her bright smile, his eyes full of love and promises he had now broken in the worst way. Koy, I don't want to lose you, he whispered, but I can't run from that boy again. A tear fell onto the photo. His sobs were soft, so soft that no one would hear, unless they were listening for it. But pain like that, you didn't need to hear it, to feel how deep it went. The next morning, reality was even crueler. Koy came downstairs, her face pale, eyes swollen, the look of someone who hadn't slept at all. Because she hadn't. She walked into the kitchen, turned on the kettle, but her mind drifted so far away that the water nearly boiled over. Before she noticed, when she turned around, she saw John's suitcase sitting by the door. Her heart skipped a beat. Her blood ran cold, her feet froze to the floor. John stepped out of the living room, exhausted, eyes firm. Koy. I have to go. Her heart broke, again, a second time, silent, but heavier than before. You're going to them. Aren't you? John didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence said everything. He moved closer, lifting a hand, as if he wanted to touch her shoulder, but stopped midway, because he knew she didn't want his touch anymore. If I don't go, and something happens to that boy, I'll never forgive myself. Koy, you understand, right? He's a child. His life matters. Koy shut her eyes tightly, tears spilling one by one, but her voice was steady as a knife. Yes, if his life matters. She lifted her head, looking straight at him. Her eyes were red, but no longer trembling. Then it will also be the death of our life together. That sentence destroyed the last remaining piece of their home. John stared at her, as if he'd been shot clean through the chest, but couldn't bleed. In the end, he said nothing, because nothing could fix it. He picked up his suitcase, walked to the door, and opened it slowly. The soft sound of the door opening was like an explosion inside both their hearts. Before stepping out, he turned to look at Koy one last time, but she kept her head down, refusing to meet his eyes. As if he was nothing more than a shadow fading out of her life, weightless, nameless, and the moment the door closed, Koy fell to the floor, crying as if the whole world had run out of air. The sound of the door closing that morning was still echoing inside Koy's head, not just the sound of a wooden door shutting, but the sound of a relationship being severed cleanly, coldly, and without mercy. Koy sat on the floor, hugging her knees, her body trembling even though the air wasn't cold, the pain inside. Her chest gnawed so deeply that her limbs felt numb. She didn't know how long she had cried. She only knew that every time she closed her eyes, the image of John dragging his suitcase out of the house appeared again and again, like a nightmare determined to haunt her, over and over without pause. A house that once held laughter, now hollow and frozen. The same house that once smelled of home-cooked meals, filled with conversation, filled with John's laughter every time he failed at cooking Thai food, was now suffocatingly silent. Koy rose slowly and walked toward the dining table, where John's half-empty water glass still Saturday. She touched it gently, the way someone would touch something so fragile, they feared it might vanish at the slightest pressure. But the moment her fingers met the glass, the truth came crashing down on her again. He wasn't coming back, not in a day, not in a month, not in a year. This silence would be her companion for a long, long time. Meanwhile, John on his way to the airport, while Koy drowned in heartbreak, John sat in the back of a taxi, staring out the window, yet seeing nothing. His hand clutched his phone tightly, his throat strained as he forced back tears. He knew, this time, he wasn't leaving home for work, nor for a trip. He was leaving to be a father to a child he had once abandoned, and in doing so, he was losing the woman he loved most. He turned to the empty seat beside him. Once upon a time, Koy had sat there, smiling at him, talking about the house, talking about their future. But now, it was empty, empty, just like his heart, before boarding the plane. His phone buzzed. John grabbed it immediately, hope igniting inside him for just a second. Maybe it was Koy, maybe she changed her mind, maybe 10 years of love was enough to stop him at the gate, but it wasn't. The screen lit up with a message from Maria. John. He collapsed again. We're moving him to the ICU. His hands trembled so badly, he could hardly tap the screen. Fear wrapped around his chest, squeezing until it hurt to breathe. He had just lost his wife, and now, he might lose the boy before ever seeing him alive. Everything was falling apart at once. as if fate itself wanted to crush him, the night before. A secret no one knew about. While Koy cried upstairs, her phone received a missed call. A foreign number, country code 63, Philippines. A message was left, unread, a message that could ignite destruction worse than anything before, a message that lay quietly in her inbox, waiting, a message short enough to dismiss, yet sharp enough to gut someone alive. You don't know him like you think you do. Maria. Koy finally picked up her phone, her hands were still trembling. She only wanted to check the time, because she had no idea how many hours had passed. Time had stopped moving after he walked out the door, but the moment the screen lit up, she saw it, the message from the unknown number. She froze, her breath hitched, her heartbeat began pounding harshly. As if preparing for another blow, slowly, painfully, she opened the message, one single sentence, stabbed straight into her chest. You don't know him like you think you do. And below it, there was an attached photo. Koy's eyes widened, her heart dropping straight to the floor, air leaving her lungs, as if someone squeezed her throat shut, because in that photo, it wasn't just the child, there was another man, standing beside him, a man whose face looked familiar, so familiar Koy recognized him instantly. She had seen his face in John's old photographs. That man was the close friend John once told her about, the friend from his Manila days, but in the photo, he stood far too close to Maria, and the child was holding that man's hand, like a son holding his father's hand. Koy froze in place. The phone in her hand felt as heavy as a block of stone, several kilos weighing down her palm. The photograph on the screen seemed to drain every sound and every hint of air from the room, devouring everything until only silence remained. In the photo, a thin, pale boy sat on a hospital bed, his expression exhausted, as if fighting something far too big for him. Beside him was a man Koy recognized immediately, not just John's old friend, but the man whose name John always reacted strangely to, whenever it accidentally slipped into conversation. His name was Lucas, a man who used to work with John in the Philippines 15 years ago, a man with whom John once shared a mysterious conflict, one serious enough that they cut contact entirely. Back then, John had brushed it off with a calm, just work issues. Nothing important. But this photo was screaming that the truth was far from nothing. Koy stared at the picture, numb, the sick boy, Lucas, and Maria standing faintly in the background, her face shadowed, almost unreadable, as if she too were hiding something. It all felt like a message aimed straight at her. There is something much darker than what your husband has told you. Another message she hadn't noticed yet. Once Koy finally regained her breath, she realized there was another line of text, one she hadn't scrolled down far enough to see before, and when she did, her pulse slammed against her ribs. Ask John why he disappeared the night Lucas was attacked. Koy's heart pounded so violently, it hurt, her hands shook uncontrollably as she reread the message, but the sentence didn't change. It stared back at her, sharp, merciless, almost cruel. Attacked. Nearly killed? What did that even mean, and how was John involved? John had always said things like, I was just working hard. I had to move suddenly for my safety. It was a dark time. Just mistakes I don't want to revisit. But now, Koy wasn't sure those were mistakes. They might be crimes, or, at the very least, a web of secrets layered far deeper than she ever imagined. Koy stood still for a long time. Then broke, not because she was sad, but because she was afraid that the man she had slept next to, for more than 10 years, might not be the man she thought she knew. Every bit of trust she once had, shattered into pieces too small to ever glue back together again. She sank onto the sofa, phone still in her trembling hand, the photo and message glaring at her, as if reminding her that something was about to be exposed. Something she might not be ready to face. John sighed. At the airport. The boarding call echoed through the terminal, as John stood with his head lowered, staring at the boarding pass in his hand, but seeing nothing. His heart wanted to turn around, go home, walk into that house, kneel in front of Koy, and explain everything, even though he wasn't sure he could say the whole truth, not without destroying himself, not without destroying her further. But another weight held him in place: responsibility, guilt. Fear that the boy might not survive if John didn't go. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He looked, and his face drained of color. A message from Koy: "Why is Lucas involved with the child?" John felt his heart drop, his lungs turned cold. He inhaled sharply, fingers gripping the phone so tightly, the tendons in his hand turned white. Then came the second message, a message that made him nearly stop breathing. "And the night Lucas was attacked, where were you?" The boarding announcement repeated. Passengers began lining up, but John stood frozen, because Koy had just asked the one question he never wanted anyone to ask, not even himself, and it was the one question he did not know how to answer without destroying what was left of his life. The boarding announcement echoed again and again, but John stood frozen, as if nailed to the airport floor. His heart hammered so violently, it felt like it might burst through his chest. Koy's messages still glowed brightly on his phone, two questions he never imagined she would learn about. Why is Lucas involved with that child? And the night Lucas was attacked, where were you? Two sentences that pressed around his throat, like invisible hands tightening with every second. He knew immediately, Maria must have contacted Koy, which meant the past he buried so deeply had clawed its way out of the grave, whether he wanted it or not. John breathed harshly, his palms slick with sweat. He needed to answer her, but he also knew the truth might destroy Koy far more than anything he had already done. Back at Koy's house, the truth closing in. Koy stared at the screen after sending her messages, her heart pounding so hard, she almost couldn't breathe. She didn't want John to justify anything. She wanted the truth she feared might break her more than betrayal ever could. She sank onto the sofa, weak and shaking. The photo of the sick boy was still open on her screen, Lucas's hand, held by the child, Maria, standing behind them. They looked too close, too familiar. Too connected, not like people who used to know each other, but like people tied by a secret that pointed straight back to John. She waited for the answer that would change her life again, not sure whether she waited out of fear or because she needed a reason to finally hate him completely. Her phone buzzed. She snatched it up, only an online ad notification. Her heart hurt from expectations collapsing. Airport. John can't run from the truth anymore. John sat down near the boarding gate. He knew Koy was waiting for his answer, but the truth wasn't a simple story he could type out. He closed his eyes, and the memories he tried to suffocate for years came crashing back like a tidal wave. The night everything happened, the night Lucas was almost beaten to death. He remembered it clearly, even though he spent 15 years trying to forget. 15 years ago, Manila, a dim, cramped bar, Music so loud it vibrated in his skull, the smell of sweat, alcohol, and smoke, and tired faces everywhere. John had been drinking heavily, frustrated from work, and drowning in disappointment. Lucas, his closest friend at the time, sat at the next table, already tipsy. Maria was standing at the bar, arguing with a man John had never seen before. The man grabbed Maria's arm, too hard, hard enough to make her flinch. Lucas shot up from his chair, shoving the man away. The bar fell silent for a heartbeat, then chaos erupted, punches, shouts, glass breaking, bodies slamming into tables. John remembered, he rushed in to pull Lucas away, but someone pushed him hard. His vision spun. His hand grabbed a liquor bottle off the table, and before he understood what he was doing, he swung. The bottle crashed onto Lucas's back with a sickening thud. Lucas collapsed. Blood, screams, chaos, and John ran. He ran out of the bar, ran through the street, ran from the world. He fled the country the next morning. Before anyone could ask questions, he never knew what truly happened afterward. He never asked, and he never told anyone, until now. The past was knocking on his door again. John opened his eyes, pale as a ghost. He needed to respond, but he didn't know how to begin. If he told the truth, he wouldn't just be an unfaithful husband, he would be a man who injured his friend, and fled like a coward. He typed his reply to Koy, but his hand shook so hard, the letters blurred. Finally, he sent one short message: Koy, I can't explain Lucas through text. And another, one that made everything even darker: if you knew everything, you might hate me even more. He pressed send. Then stood, picked up his luggage, and walked toward the boarding gate, as if walking straight into the past he'd avoided his entire life. Back to Koy, tears she couldn't stop. When she read John's messages, Koy felt her last thread of trust unravel completely. It wasn't just about Maria anymore, or the child, or the infidelity. It was about violence, secrets, layers of lies, twisting like vines around her life, until she wasn't sure what was real anymore. Koy typed only one sentence: what else are you hiding from me? But John had already boarded the plane. No signal, no reply, no assurance. He disappeared again, just like 15 years ago, leaving the mess behind for someone else to bleed from. Koy's house remained silent, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind that sounded like a scream, like the echo of a heart shattering, until nothing recognizable was left. After John's last message, there were no more replies. It felt as if he had vanished with the airplane, disappearing from her life. For the second time, Koy stared at her phone for hours, long enough that the battery was nearly dead, yet she couldn't put it down, because she was terrified that, if she did, she might never hear from him again. Meanwhile, in the Philippines, Maria stood in front of the ICU room, her eyes swollen red, clothes wrinkled from running. The moment the doctor told her, her son's condition had worsened. Beside her, Lucas stood stiff and pale, as if an invisible weight was crushing him from the inside. He didn't speak, but his fists were clenched so tightly, the veins bulged like they might burst. Maria turned to look at him slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. Are you sure we should tell John everything? Lucas looked away, but answered immediately, he deserves to know, even if he's not the boy's father. Maria's breath hitched, tears slipping down without warning. But he thinks he is. What happens when he learns the truth? Lucas cut her off, pain in every word. He's not the father. He's just the man who abandoned you, abandoned both of us. Maria fell silent, but her expression was even more wounded, because when Lucas said both of us, there was a deeper meaning, a truth she never dared say aloud. Inside the ICU, the truth everyone avoided, a 14-year-old boy lay unconscious, tubes connected to his arms, his skin so pale, the veins beneath were clearly visible, his breaths were weak, but he was fighting, stubbornly, desperately. Lucas stepped to his bedside, gently brushing the boy's cheek, as he whispered, trembling, "Dad is right here, you don't have to be afraid anymore." Maria heard it clearly, but she didn't correct him. Because this was the truth, a truth she had kept buried for years. The child was Lucas's, not John's. But why bring John into this again? Why drag him back into a life he had left behind? The answer lay buried in the sins the three of them shared, a sin none of them wanted to expose. Back to Koy, suspicion turning into fear. 3 hours passed with no reply from John, and Koy began to realize this wasn't just about a child who might or might not be his. The photo, the message from Maria, the strange intimacy between Maria, Lucas, and the boy. This wasn't a love triangle. This was something darker, something violent, and intentionally hidden. She stood up, walked to John's work desk, the one drawer he had always told her never to open. She once assumed it was for work documents, or keepsakes, or old memories he didn't want to lose. But today, her hesitation vanished. Her hands shook as she slowly pulled open the forbidden drawer. Inside, a bundle of papers tied with string, the edges worn, creased like they had been opened again and again, and hidden away in panic. Koy took them out. Her heart stopped. They were police reports. From the Philippines, in English, with photographs attached, blood-stained photographs, and she recognized one face instantly, Lucas, on the night he was beaten and nearly killed. The report listed witnesses, bar patrons, Maria's name, and John Carter, her husband. Koy's knees buckled. She collapsed to the floor, heart pounding painfully, hands cold as ice. Another paper slipped from the bundle. Instinct made her grab it immediately. She didn't know why, but she sensed it mattered. It was a letter, handwritten, crossed out repeatedly, as if John had tried to send it, and changed his mind every time. The handwriting was unmistakably his. Koy read, "Koy, if you're reading this letter, it means the truth has finally caught up to me, and I can no longer hide it from you." Hot tears spilled down her cheeks, before she even realized she was crying, but she kept reading. "I am not innocent. I hurt Lucas, and I ran from everything, even from myself." Her breath hitched. "But I didn't mean to strike him, I was drunk. Confused. And I thought the man trying to hurt Maria was him." Koy's eyes widened, her whole body trembling. "I thought he was the threat. I thought Maria was in danger. But the truth is, I misunderstood everything." The letter stopped abruptly in places, as if John couldn't write the next words, and when Koy reached the final lines, her blood turned cold. "I hurt my own friend, because I tried to protect a woman who had been lying to me all along." The room spun. Koy couldn't breathe. Everything she thought she knew was collapsing. Was John the victim? Was he manipulated? Was he violent? Was he dangerous? She didn't know. And she wasn't sure. She wanted to know. But one thing was certain, she had to find the truth herself, before this truth ripped her apart. For the second time, a cold draft slipped through the window Koy forgot to close, but no amount of cold air could compare to the icy dread crawling up her spine as she reread John's unsent letter, over and over and over. A letter he never meant to send, a letter he wished could disappear with his memories. Her hands trembled. Her heartbeat throbbed painfully, as if someone was squeezing her heart with bare hands, not because she pitied him, but because she felt herself being pulled into the black hole he created, a black hole he never intended her to see. In that stack of documents, something else was hidden. One sheet was tucked far deepest inside, as if John deliberately hid it, but fate revealed it anyway, merciless and cold. It was a DNA test result. Koy froze. Her voice shook as she whispered the words written on top. Paternity test result, negative. Meaning, the boy was not John's child. Koy clutched the paper tightly. Tears streamed down her face again, but not from relief, not joy, not comfort. It was an explosion of mixed emotions, so tangled, she couldn't tell which part hurt more. What John had done. That question stabbed deep, sharp as burning metal, and only one answer rose in her mind: because he feels guilt for Maria, more than he loves me. Her heart shattered further. On John's side, the plane was preparing to land. He sat hunched over, reading Koy's message again and again. She hadn't replied since, but he knew she had started uncovering things he never wanted her to see. He wasn't ready, not to lose her. Not to confess everything, not to face what he had run from for 15 years. He closed his eyes, and the memories came flooding back, like a painful, looping film. Flashback, another layer of truth no one ever knew. After that night in the bar, when Lucas lay bleeding on the floor, when Maria screamed until her voice broke, when the police arrived, John did not run immediately. He stood trembling in the alley beside the bar, Lucas's blood splattered on his face, his hands shaking violently. He was terrified, so terrified he felt his mind splitting apart. But then, someone arrived. Lucas was lifted into an ambulance, barely conscious, and in those fading moments, he whispered something to the police officer, words that saved John's life. He didn't mean to do it, it wasn't John's fault. That single sentence shielded John from prison, from prosecution, from charges that would have destroyed his life. And yet, John fled the very next day. He abandoned the friend who protected him, abandoned the guilt, abandoned Maria, abandoned everything. He knew it. He lived with that truth every day. The reason he returned wasn't the child, it was because of something Maria wrote, something he never showed Koy. Lucas knows you went back to Thailand. He isn't angry, but he wants to see you before he's gone. Lucas, the friend he nearly killed, the friend who protected him, the friend who saved him, was dying, and wanted to see him one last time. John swallowed hard, staring out the plane window, eyes reddened. I have to see him, at least, I have to apologize. Back to Koy, she finds the thing John feared most. After finishing the documents, she noticed a small yellow envelope, hidden under the drawer's bottom plank, wrapped in 2 layers of string, as if meant to stay sealed forever. Her pulse thundered as she untied it. Inside were black small square photos of Maria while pregnant, black small square photo of John standing beside her, black small square hospital receipts, black small square pages of John's personal journal, black small square and a letter from Lucas. She opened it. The handwriting was rough, angry, pained. He still thinks the child is his, but the truth has nothing to do with him. Don't drag him back into this. He will never survive it. Koy's hands began shaking violently. She kept reading. Then she reached the sentence that changed everything she believed. The kid is mine, not his. And Maria, she never loved John in the first place. Lucas, Koy stood up instantly, breathing uneven, chest tight, anger, hurt, confusion, all crashing at once, like a wave ready to drown her. She whispered, voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. So he was tricked, or he lied to me, or was it both? She grabbed her phone. Tonight, she would make the most important decision of her life, call him, or cut him out forever. But before she could choose, her phone rang, an incoming call, from a Philippine number, the very number that sent the pictures earlier. The name displayed, Maria. Koy froze, blood draining from her face. She had no idea that the person on the other end of the call was about to say something that would change everything so drastically that none of them would ever be the same again. White Medium Star Chapter 11. The voice Koy never trusted again. The phone rang through the silent house, cold, sharp, slicing straight through Koy's nerves. The name Maria glowed on the screen, like a black shadow rising from John's past, ready to tear apart whatever was left of Koy's present. Koy stood still, letting the phone ring once, and again, as if daring her to pick it up. She inhaled deeply, and answered, "Hello." The other end stayed silent for 1 second, a second heavy enough to crush bone, before the Filipino woman's trembling voice broke through. "Are you his wife? Are you Koy?" Koy's lips barely moved. "Yes." Maria's voice cracked, fragile like it had been soaked in tears for hours. "I'm sorry for calling like this, but I have no one left, and I think you deserve to know the truth." Koy's fingers tightened around the phone until her knuckles turned white. "Truth?" Her voice was ice, the word coming from Maria didn't calm her. It ignited her anger like gasoline thrown on fire. "What truth?" Maria paused, a long, tense silence, before she finally spoke. "The boy. He's not John's son. I never intended for him to think he was." Koy shut her eyes, pain slicing through her chest. "Then why," Koy whispered, each word sharp, "did you say the boy wanted to see his father?" Maria broke down again, pain pouring through her voice. "Because Lucas told me to. He wanted John to come back, before he dies." Koy froze. The shock hit like a sudden fall from a great height. Why drag John back with a lie like that? Maria stayed quiet for so long, Koy thought she had hung up. But then, Maria spoke a sentence that stabbed straight into Koy's heart. "Because Lucas carried all of John's guilt for him, and he's afraid to die before telling the truth." Koy's body locked up, her world turned silent, motionless. She spoke with a voice so soft, yet sharp enough to cut flesh. "What truth?" Maria inhaled shakily, before surrendering to the words she had kept buried for years. "The night Lucas was attacked, it wasn't the people in the bar. He was hurt because he was protecting John from the men trying to kill him." Koy felt the world tilt beneath her feet. "Trying to kill him? What are you talking about?" Maria spoke faster now, as if afraid she'd lose the courage to continue. "John owed the wrong people a lot of money. He got involved with someone he shouldn't have, and that night, they found him at the bar." Koy's heart pounded wildly, mouth dry, knees weak. Maria continued, her words like knives. "Lucas stepped in front of him. He got hit, stabbed, because he tried to save John." Tears spilled from Koy's eyes, silent but unstoppable. Maria's voice trembled further, and in the chaos, John panicked. He was drunk, confused. He grabbed a bottle and hit Lucas, because he thought Lucas was one of the attackers. Koy's breath hitched, her fingers nearly dropped the phone. Maria's voice faded into a distant echo, as if slipping into fog. "And after that, he ran. He left the Philippines, left me, left Lucas, left the entire truth behind." Koy slowly sank onto the floor, trembling so hard she couldn't steady her hands. Maria's final words felt like a curse. Maria's voice weakened, like she was fading with every second. Koy, you can be angry at him, you can hate me, but Lucas, he doesn't have much time left, and he wants to see John, because he wants to give the truth back, before his heart stops beating. Koy sobbed, but not the way she cried before, not because of betrayal, not because of abandonment. This time she cried, out of fear, fear of what she didn't understand yet, fear of how deep this darkness went. Fear that she was stepping into something so much bigger and bloodier than she imagined. Then Maria whispered, the sentence that froze Koy's blood. And I have to warn you, they know John is back, and John might not be the only one who's about to die. The line cut off. Koy stared at the phone in her shaking hand, tears falling in a stream, because now, this wasn't about betrayal, or a child, or an affair. It was about blood, it was about death, and it was pulling her in, whether she wanted it or not. And now, she had no idea whether John was still safe at all. The fading daylight outside was swallowed by night, but the darkness in her chest swallowed everything faster. She sat shaking, phone clutched in her hand, Maria's last warning echoing through her skull. They know John is back, and John might not be the only one who's about to die. Koy slowly lifted her head, realizing someone could already be watching her. The air around the house felt wrong, too still, too quiet, no cars, no footsteps, not even the sound of a bird, as if the world was holding its breath, just like her. Her phone vibrated again. Koy nearly jumped out of her skin. This time, not Maria, not a Philippine number. It was John. Her hesitation lasted only half a heartbeat. She answered. Where are you? Her voice cracked with panic, the other end filled with his ragged breathing. Like he was running, or being chased. Koy. I just landed. But something's wrong. John's voice trembled, not with sadness, but with fear. What do you mean, what's happening? Silence for one awful second, before he said the words that froze her veins. Someone followed me from the airport. On the other side of the city, John was running. He sprinted through a narrow alley behind an old building. The streetlights flickered like a horror film. Footsteps thundered behind him, too fast, too close. He didn't dare look back. He pressed his phone against his ear, breath shaking hard enough to break the connection. Koy, listen to me. If they catch me, no. You need to go to the hospital. Go to Lucas. Her panic drowned every other emotion. John's voice cracked. No. Koy, listen, Lucas isn't the target. She froze. They want me, Koy, they've wanted me since 15 years ago. Her heart hammered painfully. Because of the debt, because they think you snitched. John didn't speak for a moment. When he did, his voice sounded like a man confessing at the edge of death. No, because I stole something from them, something I should have never touched. The truth Koy never expected. She had to grab the table to steady herself. What did you get involved with, John? The silence that followed told her everything she feared. This wasn't about a bar fight. It wasn't about a woman. It wasn't about a child. It was something deeper, deadlier. Finally, John spoke. I stole their client list. When I worked at the security firm in Manila, all the names, all the heads of the network, I planned to use it to bargain. To escape the debt. Koy gasped, hand over her mouth. This wasn't idiocy, it was suicide. And that list, where is it now? John's breathing became harsh, like someone was closing in. With me, in my briefcase. Koy's voice broke into a scream. John, are you insane? A shadow passed the alley wall near him. Footsteps grew louder. John whispered rapidly, Koy. If something happens to me, don't say that, you're going to survive. But John cut her off. Koy, I won't let them get to you, no matter what I have to do. Then, a loud thud, like a body slammed into a wall. Koy screamed, John. John. The line crackled, distorted sounds, a struggle, something falling. Then John's broken voice came through, barely audible. Koy. Run. And the call ended. Koy froze, a living statue of terror. The phone slipped from her hand and hit the floor with a shattering echo. She tried calling back, once, twice, again. Each time, the number you have dialed cannot be reached. Koy stood trembling, breath gone, heart tearing itself apart. She knew now. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just a past mistake. This wasn't even about a child. This was life and death, blood, crime, people who didn't forgive, people who didn't forget. And now, she was part of it, whether she wanted to be or not. Her voice cracked as she whispered into the empty house. John, where are you? No answer, only the shifting shadow, sliding past the window outside, quiet, quick, and unmistakably deliberate. Someone was watching her. The entire house was dead silent, so silent that Koy could hear her own breathing, loud and ragged, as if a storm was trapped inside her chest. She stood frozen, staring at the window. That shadow, it moved. Not an illusion, not her imagination. Someone was out there. Someone was watching her. Koy raised a trembling hand to her mouth. Her heart pounded so violently it felt like her ribs might crack. John. Her voice shook. Where are you? No answer, only silence, a silence more terrifying than any sound. A crack of movement under the porch. Koy jolted as if electricity shot through her body. That sound, a twig snapping, footsteps brushing through the grass. Someone was circling her house. She forced herself to the curtain, hands shaking so hard she could barely grasp the fabric. But before she could pull it aside, knock. Knock, soft, slow, deliberate, as if sending a message. Koy stumbled backward, cold sweat running down her temples. The knocking came again. Knock. 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 She grabbed the kitchen knife with trembling fingers. The blade shimmered under the dim light, reflecting her fear. Then, the doorknob twisted, once, twice, again. Koy's heart roared in her ears. Someone was trying to open the door. A shadow pressed against the gap under the door, big, heavy, like two men standing together. The door nudged, tested, as if the intruder was checking how strong the lock was. Koy clenched her teeth, forcing herself not to scream. Suddenly, a car screeched to a stop in front of the house. Footsteps sprinted. The person at the door ran. Koy barely had time to breathe when another round of knocking slammed into the door. Urgent, fast. Desperate, Koy. Open the door. Her breath caught. She knew that voice. She looked through the peephole and her blood drained. A woman stood outside, soaked from the rain, hair dripping. Face pale and terrified, blood smeared on her hand. A woman she never expected to see in person. Maria, in Thailand. Koy didn't trust it, didn't trust her, didn't trust anything anymore. But Maria didn't look manipulative, she looked hunted. Maria knocked again, harder. Her voice shook violently. Koy. They're after me, I have nowhere else to go. Koy's heart hammered. She whispered through the door, Where is John? Maria's expression broke. Like someone who had just watched a nightmare unfold, her voice cracked. They took him. The world stopped. Maria continued, her voice shattered, breath trembling. And if we don't hurry, he might not make it to morning. Koy's hand shook as she unlocked the door. Maria collapsed inside, her whole body was wet, trembling uncontrollably. She fell to her knees, gasping, "Koy." Her voice was raw. "They know everything. They know he returned to Thailand. They know he has the list he stole. They've killed dozens of people, just to get it back." Koy felt her chest tighten, anger, fear, confusion, all crashing at once. "Then why were you with them?" Her voice turned sharp. "You think I'll believe anything you say?" Maria looked up slowly, her eyes, raw, terrified, too real to fake. "Because I betrayed them, for John, and now, I'm the next one they're going to kill." A sudden crash, glass shattering from the back of the house. Both women whipped their heads toward the sound. Koy felt her blood turn to ice. That wasn't wind, that wasn't an animal, it was intentional. The sound of someone breaking in. A figure climbed through the broken window, silent, controlled, practiced. A man in black, face obscured, body large, imposing. He stepped into the living room, light revealing black tattoos crawling up his arm, and eyes devoid of anything human. He spoke in a voice colder than the night outside, "Return. What belongs to us, and this ends tonight." Maria recoiled. Koy tightened her grip on the knife. Her breath came in shallow bursts. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't a threat. It was a sentence. First John, then Maria, and now, her. The sound of Koy's and Maria's breathing filled the entire house, sharp, uneven, and terrified. Both women stepped backward slowly, as the man in black advanced into the living room, moving with the calm confidence of a predator who had already chosen his prey. Koy tightened her grip on the kitchen knife, but her hand trembled so violently the blade glinted under the dim light. The man's eyes swept across the room, cold, empty, calculating, as if deciding which one of them he should eliminate first. It was clear from the look in his eyes, this man had killed before, and tonight. "He came here to kill again. Where is it?" His voice sliced through the air, deep, heavy, metallic. "The file, the list, where is it?" Koy flinched at the sound, her body reacting even before her mind registered the words. She shifted only slightly, and he moved instantly. Whoosh! The blade in his hand cut through the air, missing her cheek by only an inch. Koy stumbled back, gasping, her shoulder hitting the table behind her. Maria cried out, I don't know." He ran. I ran, but the man didn't care. He kept walking forward, calm, steady, unstoppable, like an executioner who already knew the fate of his targets. Suddenly, the lights went out. The entire house was swallowed by darkness, thick, suffocating, absolute. Maria screamed, Koy screamed, footsteps thundered across the floor, too fast, too close. The man's breathing, it was right there in front of Koy, so close she could feel the heat of it. Koy swung the knife blindly, clang, metal struck metal. He caught her wrist. His grip was monstrous, so strong that Koy dropped the knife instantly. It clattered across the floor. She screamed in pain, her wrist felt like it might snap. A lightning strike lit up the room, just for a moment. A blinding flash exposed everything in a gruesome snapshot. The man stood only inches from her. His knife was stained with fresh blood. Maria was behind him, crying, shaking, completely helpless. And on the man's sleeve, blood that did not belong to either of them. Then darkness swallowed the room again. the fight erupted, furniture toppled, glass shattered, something heavy hit the floor. Maria screamed, the man grunted, a body slammed into a wall. Koy crawled blindly across the cold tiles, her heart hammering loud enough she could barely hear the chaos. Just when she thought she had gotten away, a hand clamped over her shoulder. Huge. Solid. Unshakable. She opened her mouth to scream, but his blood-stained hand covered her lips immediately. His voice brushed her ear, low and dead as a grave, "You know too much." Koy thrashed, kicked, clawed, but he dragged her effortlessly across the floor, toward the back door. She knew, if he got her out of the house, she would never be seen alive again. Maria screamed, louder than ever, "Goy! Run!" A violent crash followed, something overturned, maybe Maria fighting back, or being dragged herself. Screamed again, pain twisting her voice into something inhuman. "He has a gun." Koy froze in horror. The man hesitated, just enough to take aim. Click. The unmistakable sound of a gun being cocked echoed in the darkness. Bang. The blast shook the entire house. Windows rattled. Birds scattered outside. Koy shut her eyes. Waiting for pain, waiting for death, but nothing hit her. Instead, something shoved her sideways, and she fell heavily onto the floor. The man turned away from her, and rushed back toward the fight. He hadn't shot Koy, he had shot someone else. The lights flickered back on, and the scene was worse than she could have imagined. Maria lay on the floor, blood streaming from her upper arm. The bullet had gone through. She wasn't dead, but she was bleeding badly. The man in black was gone, either hiding in another room, or preparing to come back and finish the job. Koy rushed to Maria, holding her shaking body. Maria bit her lip hard, tears streaming down her face. "Koy, they took John, and now, they know the file is still with him." Koy stared at her, speechless, terrified, shaking. Maria grabbed her arm with her bloody hand, with the desperation of someone drowning. Her voice was breaking, but her words were like ice. "They don't just want the file, they want everyone who has seen it, and Koy, that includes you now." Blood dripped from Maria's arm, leaving a long red trail across the floor, but Koy had no time to stop. She dragged Maria behind the sofa, trying to keep the wounded woman conscious, trying to keep her alive. Maria's breathing was rough, uneven, as if her lungs were about to give out. "Hold on," Koy whispered, trying to keep her voice steady, but her eyes were trembling, as if she herself was seconds away from collapsing. Maria nodded weakly, her face pale like a sheet of paper. Koy wrapped the wound with shaking hands. The cloth darkened immediately with blood. Her fingers were trembling so badly she almost couldn't tie it tight enough, but she had to. If she didn't, Maria would bleed out. "I'm fine." Maria forced the words out, barely audible. "Koy, listen. We must hurry. John. He's running out of time." Koy froze mid-movement, her head shot up. "Where did they take him?" Maria swallowed painfully. Every word looked like it hurt. "A warehouse. By the old pier. The one they use for smuggling. No one goes near it, unless they want to disappear." Koy's whole body tensed, her heart dropping into a cold void. "Which warehouse, Maria? There are dozens near the docks." Maria bit her lip, gathering enough breath to speak clearly. "Warehouse 17, near the abandoned pier, the one no ship has docked at. For almost 10 years. That name, that place, hit Koy like a hammer. She had heard of it, everyone had. People went missing there, bodies had been found there. Police never went near it after officers were killed years ago. Warehouse 17 was a place whispered only in warnings, a place where people vanished without a trace. Thunder cracked outside, as if announcing that tonight no one would leave unharmed. Koy turned to Maria. Maria was no longer an enemy, not the other woman, not the threat she once feared. She was someone trapped in the same hell, and the only person who knew where John was. Koy clenched her jaw. What will they do to him? Maria's eyes welled with silent tears. They'll kill him, tonight. Koy felt the air leave her lungs, like her heart had been stabbed with a burning blade. No, I won't let them touch him. Her voice shook, but it was filled with a determination she had never felt in her life. Maria grabbed her wrist, her hand shaking so badly blood dripped onto Koy's skin. If you go now, you'll die too. Koy answered instantly. If I don't, he dies anyway. Suddenly, a car stopped right outside the house. Two bright headlights blasted into the living room, lighting up everything inside. Brakes screeched. A car door slammed. Koy shoved Maria down behind the sofa, trying not to gasp out loud. They're back. Maria shook her head quickly, terrified. No, that's not them. I know that engine, that car. Koy peeked through the curtain. Her heart skipped a beat. A police car? A man in full-tie police uniform stepped out, confident, calm, walking straight toward her door. But something was wrong, very wrong. He hadn't used sirens. He wasn't calling for backup. And the gun at his hip, it wasn't a regulation police gun. Maria whispered, horrified. He's not real police. Listen to me. He works for them. Koy's breath caught in her throat. The man knocked, not loud, not hurried, but with the steady rhythm of someone who knew the people inside were trapped. Open the door. Please, we received a call about an assault in this house. Open up. I need to check on the gunshot we heard earlier. Every hair on Koy's body stood up. He knew someone inside had been shot. He knew exactly what happened. This wasn't help. This was a hunter, pretending to be a rescuer. Maria clutched Koy's arm. If we open that door, we die. Koy swallowed hard, her mind racing, her pulse pounding like a war drum. She looked toward the door, toward Maria, toward the knife on the floor. Her expression changed, fear disappearing, replaced by something sharper, determined, cold, defiant. She whispered, we're leaving through the back, we're going to him. Tonight. At the door, the fake officer knocked again, calm, patient, deadly. Open the door, miss, I just need to check, you're safe. His voice was soft, too soft, soft like poison. Koy picked up the knife, her hand still trembling, but her gaze steady as steel. Tonight was no longer a night of running, it was a night of hunting the truth, a night to reach her husband, before they executed him in Warehouse 17, and before she herself was silenced forever. The kind of knock from someone who was certain his prey had nowhere left to run. Ma'am. I know you're in there. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Open the door. Koy trembled, but her eyes hardened, sharp. Cold, terrified and fierce all at once. At a moment like this, she couldn't rely on the police, couldn't rely on anyone. It was just her, and the bleeding woman beside her, a woman who, just hours ago, she never imagined would become an ally. The back door was the only way out. But just as dangerous. Koy leaned close to Maria and whispered, her voice barely more than a breath, go to the kitchen, we'll leave through the back. Maria braced herself on the wall, her arms soaked in blood, her breath ragged and shallow. The banging at the front door suddenly grew violent, no longer calm knocking, but pounding. Open, last warning. A gun clicked, the metallic clack slicing through the silence. Koy nearly stopped breathing. The hallway to the kitchen felt like a death corridor. Their footsteps were light, but their hearts pounded like war drums. The lights flickered, not randomly, as if someone was tampering with the power, as if someone else was already inside. Koy didn't dare look back. She was terrified she'd see another silhouette following them. The kitchen, dim lights, cold air, smell of metal from Maria's blood. Koy yanked open a drawer and grabbed another knife, larger, sharper, deadlier. Maria leaned on the counter, her face ghost pale. He's still at the front, but they always work in teams. Koy understood immediately. If the man at the front was bait, someone else was likely waiting at the back. She inhaled deeply. Everything in her shook, but she couldn't die tonight. Not before she found John. The back door. Koy placed her hand on the handle, cold, slippery with sweat. The moment she turned it, a leaf cracked outside, a soft, faint crunch, but unmistakable. Someone was out there. She froze. Maria whispered, terrified, "They're waiting. They know we'll try to run this way." Koy slowly, silently turned the lock back and closed the door. Her chest tightened, her breath shook, her mind raced. That's when she saw it. A vent, a narrow ventilation opening high on the wall. Tiny, cramped, but big enough for two desperate women to crawl through. Koy pulled a chair over, its legs scraping the floor with a sound she prayed wasn't loud enough. She pointed up. Climb, now. Crawling to survive, like animals escaping slaughter. Koy climbed first, then dragged Maria up with every last ounce of strength. Maria bit back screams of pain as the wound tore open again. As soon as they squeezed inside the vent, Koy slid the metal cover back into place. Not even 5 seconds later, the back door exploded open. Bang! The entire vent rattled. Koy slapped her hand over her mouth to keep from crying out. Through the slits in the vent, she saw a second man, not the one from before, another one, armed, a pistol with a suppressor. Flashlight mounted beneath the barrel. He scanned the kitchen, slowly, methodically, like a predator checking his cage. If they had been 10 seconds slower, they'd be dead on the kitchen floor. Koy swallowed hard, still trembling, guiding Maria through the dusty, suffocating tunnel. Halfway through the crawl, Maria gripped Koy's arm. Koy, listen. Koy turned, eyes full of tears from fear, exhaustion, shock. Maria's voice trembled. If I don't make it, you keep going. You have to find him. Koy shook her head violently. No, we're surviving this together. Maria forced a weak, painful smile. Then she said the sentence that froze Koy's blood. Koy, you don't know. Do you? John wasn't taken because of the documents alone. Koy stopped moving, her breath hitched. What do you mean? Maria inhaled sharply, like the truth itself hurt to speak. They took him because he found out who in the gang is already here in Thailand. Koy's heart felt like it cracked in her chest. Who is here? Maria whispered, so faint it was almost inaudible, but the name she spoke paralyzed Koy, the one sitting inside the National Police headquarters. Koy's eyes widened, her throat tightened, because that meant it wasn't just international criminals. A high-ranking Thai police officer was part of the network, and that officer was hunting her tonight. Below them, footsteps moved toward the living room, lights flicking on in every room. They knew Koy was still inside, but Koy and Maria were already crawling toward the outer wall, toward the neighbor's yard, toward a trash-filled corner with an abandoned car. She knew one thing now: if she stopped, even for a second, she'd never see her husband alive again, and her enemy was no longer just a gang, but someone sworn to protect the public, who was now coming to kill her. Tonight, no one would save her, except herself. The night wind cut like ice, but Koy barely felt it. She and Maria crawled out of the ventilation shaft, falling into the backyard of an empty neighboring house. Silent, cold, abandoned, Koy got out first, and pulled Maria down after her. Blood dripped from Maria's arm, leaving a dark, unmistakable trail on the cement floor. Koy ripped the hem of her own shirt, and tied another layer around Maria's wound, tighter this time. Maria gasped for air, but still managed to speak. "If you don't hurry, they'll figure out where we escaped." Koy nodded, slipped Maria's good arm over her shoulder, and helped her creep toward the back fence. From her own house, voices still echoed, objects being overturned, a gun scraping across wooden furniture, a deep, calm male voice ordering, "Keep searching. Those two women are still close." Koy held her breath as she pulled Maria farther away. Behind the houses, a narrow alley between the blocks, only flickering streetlights, and a faraway dog barking in the dark. Koy hid Maria behind a row of trash bins, and waited for her own heartbeat to settle. Then she pulled out her phone. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. Maria's voice trembled. "Don't call the police, not now. If you do, they'll know. And the officer who answers might be one of theirs." Koy swallowed hard. It felt like her heart dropped into a bottomless pit. Thai police, the ones who should protect the innocent, were possibly the hunters tonight. Koy needed a car, but at this hour, in this deserted neighborhood, no taxis, no bikes, not even the sound of an engine, until Maria pointed weakly across the street. An old pickup truck sat there, rusted, forgotten, but the driver's door was unlocked. Maria managed a faint smile, as if heaven handed them a single fragile lifeline. Koy rushed over, helping Maria into the passenger seat. She turned the key with shaking hands. The truck coughed, choked, then roared to life. The moment the engine started, someone shouted behind them, "There! The two women!" Koy slammed the gas pedal. The truck lurched forward, tires screeching against the asphalt. A gunshot rang out. Bang! The rear window shattered, glass shards flying into Koy's face, cutting her skin. The truck swerved. Koy gritted her teeth and forced the wheel steady. She could not fall now. Not tonight. Tonight was life or death. Maria cried out hoarsely, "Go, head toward the bay, the abandoned port." Koy pressed down the accelerator. Rain began to pour, heavy, blurring the windshield, wind pushing the truck off center. But she didn't slow. If she stopped, John would die, and she would die with him. The coastal road, a place no sane person would visit at night. Warehouses lined the street like dead giants, few lights, many broken, everything drowned in shadows, until a rusted metal arch appeared ahead, abandoned port, restricted area. And beneath the faded sign, 17, Koy's heart pounded, fear and hope crashing together like waves. She wanted to reach it quickly. She also didn't want to see what waited inside. Warehouse number 17, the structure loomed in the darkness, massive and rotten. The steel door rusted through, but one light shone from inside. A light that shouldn't be there. In a place abandoned for a decade, Koy parked behind an old container, killed the engine, and turned to Maria. Maria's breathing was shallow, her skin almost gray. "Koy, if I can't walk inside with you, don't wait for me. Go. Save him." Koy shook her head fiercely, and gripped Maria's hand. "We're going together. I'm not leaving you." Maria gave a faint, fragile smile. tears sliding down her pale face. "You're stronger than he ever realized. John is so lucky." Koy bit her trembling lip and opened the door. Before entering, a sound echoed from inside the warehouse, a man's voice, raw, broken, tortured. Koy's blood turned to ice. She knew that voice, John's voice, her husband. He screamed, a sound filled with agony, metal clashing, the sound of someone being dragged across cement. Koy's face changed instantly, a mixture of pain, rage, and despair. Tears fell, but her eyes burned with fire. Maria whispered, almost collapsing, "Koy, they're going to kill him." Koy tightened her grip on the knife. Her hands trembled, but her heart did not. She inhaled sharply, then spoke in a low, deadly voice, "I'm bringing him home, no matter who I have to kill." And she pulled open the steel door of warehouse number 17, stepping into the darkness of hell, unaware that inside waited, not only foreign crime syndicates, but also the high-ranking Thai police trader, the man John knew too much about. The steel door of warehouse number 17 screeched open, eek, as if warning that the person pushing it was stepping into a hell with no way back. Koy slowly pushed the door open, inch by inch, trying not to make any sound. Her breathing was sharp and uneven, her hands trembling like someone about to go into shock, but in her eyes, there was a fire that nothing could extinguish anymore. Maria leaned against the metal wall, too weak to go inside, yet she still forced herself to nod at Koy, telling her to move on. "Be careful, those people. They're not ordinary criminals." Koy held Maria's hand one last time, squeezing gently, like making a promise, then stepped into the darkness of the warehouse, like a woman ready to do anything for the one she loves, even if she had to walk through blood and death to do it. Inside the warehouse, a darkness so heavy it feels alive, the air reeked of rust, steel, and a faint metallic smell of blood. The cold concrete floor held smears of dried red stains, as if people had been dragged through here countless times. The overhead lights flickered, just enough to show that this place had been used as a holding cell long before tonight. Koy followed the sound, that faint, painful sound she could recognize for the rest of her life, John's voice. Her husband, a loud metallic thud, thud. "You are..." A gun with a flashlight attached in his hand, one of the syndicate's men, no doubt. Worse, he walked with confidence, like he knew this place well, as if he belonged here. Koy held her breath so tightly, her chest felt like it would collapse. She heard chains, metal scraping against metal, soft but clear, from the innermost room of the warehouse. Chains. They had chained John up. Koy bit her lips so hard she tasted blood, rage and grief swirling until she could barely control herself. She crawled along the shadows of crates, metal frames, broken container pieces. They were the only things shielding her from bullets. The man's footsteps circled nearby, like he was guarding a particular point. Then, he spoke in a low tone, like reporting through a radio. "Boss, he can't hold on much longer. He'll be dead soon. Should we finish him now, per your orders?" Koy's heart nearly stopped. Her hand shook so violently she almost dropped her knife. A voice answered from the radio, deep, cold, familiar enough to terrify her. "Wait for me. I want to see his face one last time, before he dies." The voice shocked Koy so badly, her knees nearly gave out. Maria warned her that someone high up in the police force was involved. Koy had heard that voice on TV, in press conferences, in the news. The voice of the man she once believed was a protector of the people. The voice of General Chonlatee, Deputy Police Commissioner, famous, well-respected, smiling warmly in front of cameras, one of the most trusted public figures. But now, he was the devil ordering her husband's death. Koy covered her mouth, trying to muffle her scream. Tears streamed down her face, but her eyes turned into flames, flames ready to burn everything, even herself. Koy crawled toward the inner room. John's voice grew closer, so faint it sounded like a dying breath. Please. I can't breathe. Koy clenched her teeth and tightened her grip on the knife. The steel door to the room was closed, but a sliver of faint light seeped through, enough for her to see 3 shadows inside. One of them was tied to a chair, head hanging, too weak to lift it. She knew instantly who it was, even from a silhouette. John. The husband who once smiled at her every morning, who promised to grow old together, who once protected her from everything. Now he was dying, alone, in a dark room, with no one to save him. Koy bit her lip until blood spilled. Her heart shattered again, but she didn't back down, not this time. She moved to stand, but then, a voice spoke, close, clear, right behind her. A voice that froze her blood, as if she had been plunged into Arctic ice. You thought I didn't see you come in. Koy? Koy froze, trembling so hard she nearly collapsed. She slowly turned around. Standing there was not a henchman, not a stranger, but someone she never expected to see in a place like this. A man with a small tattoo on his neck, a tattoo she had always wondered about, but never asked. A man she trusted, a man she thought was just a neighbor. Now he was pointing a suppressed gun at her, wearing a thin, chilling smile. You really shouldn't have followed us here, John's wife. Koy froze, her whole body turning to stone. The hand that once gripped a knife with desperate strength, now trembled so violently the blade nearly slipped. The man standing before her, the man pointing a gun at her head, was someone she knew. Someone who had smiled at her while watering his plants, someone who greeted her at the local grocery store, someone who once helped her carry heavy boxes into her house. Tonight he stood in the darkness of the warehouse, calm-faced, armed, and calling her name, with the voice of a man who knew her, far more intimately than he ever should have. Koy swallowed hard, her voice barely escaping her throat. Who are you, really? He smiled, a thin smile, quiet, but with a coldness that crawled down her spine, from the back of her neck, to the bottom of her feet. Me? He tilted his head slightly, almost playfully, like a predator easing into the moment. I still use my old name. Kang, your friendly neighbor. Koy's teeth clenched, tears slipping down her cheeks, from betrayal, rage, and heartbreak intertwined. Why are you here? Why would you do something like this? Kang narrowed his eyes, and stepped closer with the gun, still as relaxed as if they were having small talk, over a fence between their yards. Because I've been working for the boss, long before you even moved in. The boss, General Chonlatee, the monster in a uniform, the man behind all the dirty operations, the one who ordered John's abduction. Koy trembled harder, fear and fury twisting inside her, like barbed wire tightening around her heart. Kang began revealing the truth, piece by piece, like driving a blade deeper with every word. You know, Koy, you married a man who shouldn't have known as much as he did. John was a problem. Koy bit her lip until she tasted blood. Tears streamed, but she kept her gaze locked on him. John was only trying to protect our family. He didn't do anything wrong. Kang let out a soft laugh, lifeless, emotionless, a laugh that crushed whatever hope she had left. Oh, he was wrong. He snooped into places he shouldn't have. He tracked routes he shouldn't see. He asked questions no one should ask, and worst of all, he loved you so much, he was willing to do anything to keep you safe." That last sentence was like a whip tearing her heart open. Koy forced herself to ask the question she didn't want the answer to. "So you were in my life all this time, just to spy on me?" King nodded casually, without a hint of guilt. "Yes, I needed to know what you knew, what you might suspect, and what John was doing behind our backs." Koy's tears fell harder, her world shattered piece by piece. "And the day you helped me carry things, the day you gave me that plant, the day you told me I was kind." King smirked, a clean, empty, heartless smile. "All of that was part of the job." Koy nearly collapsed. The world cracked beneath her feet, but King wasn't done twisting the knife. "Honestly, Koy, I even liked you. Too bad you were too obsessed with your foreign husband." Koy tightened her grip on the knife, her jaw clenched with a rage so sharp, it nearly turned her mad. "Where is John?" King raised the gun, until the cold metal touched her forehead, so close she could smell the steel, and he spoke, with the coldest voice she had ever heard. "Right in that room, and he'll stop breathing, in a few minutes." Koy trembled, tears streaming, but her eyes burned red with fury. King leaned in close, speaking slowly, clearly, each word slicing her like a blade. "But don't worry, if you don't move, I'll kill you first, so he gets to watch his wife take her last breath before he dies next." The world stopped. Koy's heart turned to ice, cracked, and shattered, but right as everything seemed lost, a small clanging sound echoed, a piece of metal, hitting the floor. From the shadows behind King, a figure dragged itself forward, blood covering her arms, face pale as death. Maria. She shouldn't have been able to stand, she shouldn't even have been conscious, yet she crawled forward, with a long iron rod in her hand, ready to strike him dead. Koy's eyes widened. She wanted to scream, warn her, but she was too late. King turned, like an animal sensing danger, and saw her reflection in the metal. He twisted his body, lifted his gun, and, a single gunshot, the blast echoed through the warehouse, repeating off the iron walls, like a dozen ghosts screaming. Maria froze, the rod dropped from her hand, her eyes widened, filled with pain and regret. Koy screamed, a raw, animal sound. "Maria!" Maria collapsed, blood seeped from her chest. Right before she lost consciousness, she whispered one final breath. "John. Right side. Last room. Hurry." Her eyes slowly shut. Koy sobbed, but the grief in her eyes burned into rage, a rage hot enough to swallow the entire warehouse in flames. King turned back to her, with that cruel, amused smirk. "You're all alone now, Koy. So come on, your turn." Koy lifted her head slowly. Tears dripped onto the floor, but the look in her eyes was no longer that of prey, they were the eyes of death itself. Her voice was low, soft, but cold enough to make King hesitate for half a heartbeat. "Kill me, fine. Try killing me, before I kill you first." Warehouse number 17 had become a killing ground, dark, metallic, soaked in the stench of rust and blood. And in the center of that nightmare stood a woman who had lost everything within a single night. Koy. Her body trembled, tears streaming down her bruised face, but her eyes, sharp as a blade, glowed with a vengeance so potent it felt poisonous. King raised his gun, smiling faintly, as if murder was nothing more than a chore. "You've got nothing left to lose, so let's end this here." Koy didn't speak, she only tightened her grip on the knife, having already made her choice, live or die, tonight. a confrontation inches away from death. King pulled the trigger. Click, a split second, the shortest moment of her life, to decide if she would die or survive. Koy launched herself forward, slamming her palm upward into the gun. The barrel jerked toward the ceiling. Bang! A bullet ripped into the metal roof, and sparks rained down. King flinched for a fraction of a second, before swinging the back of his hand into her face. Crack! Koy staggered, lips split open, blood dripping. But she didn't fall, because falling meant dying. King cursed, "You still want to fight? Do you even know?" Before he finished, Koy drove her knife into his arm. Thud, SHNK. Blood spurted. King held in pain, the gun flying from his grip, and clattering across the floor. "You little..." He kicked her hard, sending her crashing into a wooden crate. The impact made her vision blur, but Koy dragged herself up again, like a woman ready to tear out her enemy's throat, with her bare hands. A horrifying truth slips out mid-fight. King stalked toward her, blood dripping down his arm, yet grinning, as if enjoying every second. "You know, Koy, you should never have come here. Originally, I didn't want to touch you at all. I only wanted your husband." Koy spat blood, her voice shaking with blistering fury. "You monster, you deceived me, you killed innocent people." King smirked, eyes filled with cruelty. "Maria, right? Oh, she was ours from the start. Information about her kid, the Philippines, every piece of it, fed to her by us." Koy froze, her heart stopped for a full beat. "You mean, Maria was manipulated?" King laughed coldly. "Of course, we messed her up on purpose, to stress John out, to fracture your little family, so it'd be easier to capture him." Koy's teeth sank into her lips so hard blood dripped down her chin. Her heart shattered again, worse than any time before. Rage becomes her weapon. King suddenly grabbed her hair, and yanked her upward. Koy screamed in agony, but after tonight, pain no longer held power over her. Her hand fell upon a shattered glass shard on the floor. Without hesitation, she slashed his arm. SCHHRK, another burst of blood. King shrieked and released her hair instantly. Koy seized the moment. With every ounce of strength she had left, she shoved him to the floor, and grabbed a heavy brick from against the wall. King's eyes widened with disbelief. "Koy. Wait, what are you?" Koy lifted the brick, hands shaking, her breath ragged. Her voice, barely more than a broken whisper, carried a chilling stillness that stopped the world. "For John, for Maria, for everything you destroyed." Koy. "Wait. Listen." Thud, the first hit landed, blood splattered all over her face. She didn't stop, because she saw John being tortured, she saw Maria collapsing, she saw years of lies, manipulation, everything breaking inside her again. Thud, 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 the sound of brick against bone, the sound of skull cracking, the sound of a man's life coming to an end. And then, silence. King's body went limp, blood pooled around him, eyes wide open, lifeless. Koy panted hard, hands trembling, covered in blood. The brick slipped from her hands, and hit the floor with a dull thud. But she had no time to mourn, no time for guilt, no time for anything, because John's voice echoed from the dark room at the back, a faint voice, almost gone. "Help me." Koy whipped around, tears spilling again. "Wait for me. I'm coming for you." She sprinted toward the room, toward her dying husband, not knowing that inside that room stood not just John, but also General Chonlatee, waiting for her, with the cruelest smile she'd ever face. Koy could hear nothing but the sound of her own breathing, echoing harshly inside her skull. She stumbled past Pyang's lifeless body, through blood, through darkness, through a silence so heavy, it felt like it was pressing on every bone in her body. Inside the warehouse, the only sound left was the quiet, rhythmic drip of blood, each drop hitting the concrete floor, like a clock counting down to the end. Koy steadied herself against the wall, panting as though every breath might be her last, but she kept moving, one step, another, because in that back room was her husband, the man she still had to save, even if her own body was already pushed past its limit. The last metal door, Koy wanted to burst in, but her body barely obeyed her anymore. Her hand shook so violently she could hardly grasp the handle. Her breathing was ragged, fragile, like she could collapse at any moment, but her heart was harder than iron now. She forced the door open. The hinges screamed, eek, like the last cry of some soul being dragged into hell. Inside the room, a single light hung from the ceiling, cold, white, flickering, the kind of light that made even reality look like a nightmare. Koy's breath hitched. The sight in front of her shattered her heart all over again. John was chained to a metal chair. His wrists were cuffed behind his back, his ankles bound with chains, his whole body a map of bruises and cuts. Blood dried at the corner of his lips. His head hung forward, like a man hovering on the edge of unconsciousness. Tears spilled from Koy's eyes instantly. "John, can you hear me?" She took a step forward, but before she could get near him, a voice slid out from the darkness at the back of the room, a deep voice, calm, so cold, it made her heart skip a beat. "Don't touch him yet, you don't have my permission." Koy froze. She turned slowly, her whole body trembling, from fear and hatred mixed together. From the shadows, a man stepped out. He wore a full dress uniform, medals, rank insignia flashing under the flickering light. Her body was shaking, but she refused to take a single step back. "Let him go, let my husband go." Her voice trembled, half choked with sobs, but she forced every word out with all the strength she had. General Chonlatee chuckled softly, the amused laugh of a man who knew he held all the pieces. "Koy, I'm not some street thug. I don't let go of anyone who's seen my business." He walked behind John, resting a hand lightly on his shoulder. That touch wasn't gentle, it was a threat. Koy's body trembled, her eyes burning red. "Don't touch him." The general smiled, slow, completely at ease. "Do you know what's truly pitiful about you?" Koy gritted her teeth, tears streaming. He continued, each word a knife. "This isn't the first time your husband has been in our hands." Koy's mind went blank, her heart plunged into a frozen pit. What do you mean, John? Has been here before?" General Chonlatee nodded lazily, as if he were recounting a boring story. "Yes, months ago, we already had him, we threatened him, pressed him, because he knew too much, but he was stubborn. He dared to say he'd expose everything if we laid a finger on you." Koy slapped her own hand over her mouth, as a broken sob tore out of her chest. The general went on, his voice now turning into pure poison. He begged us not to hurt you. He pleaded like a dog. He said, "Kill me instead, just don't touch my wife." Koy's knees collapsed. She fell to the floor, crying like her heart had been ground into dust. She had never known, not once, she never knew, how many times John had been tortured already, for her sake. But tonight's cruelty still wasn't done. The general walked closer. Koy tried to stand, but her legs refused. Her hand still held the knife. but it trembled so badly she could barely keep her grip. He bent down, leaning in close enough to smell the blood on her. "A woman like you, if you just stayed quiet, your life would have been peaceful. But you chose to interfere, you chose to kill my men. You chose to waste." The entire room shook, the light flickered wildly, dust rained down like gray snow. The general froze for a second, whipping his head toward the door. Koy lifted her face, eyes wide, with confusion, and the first flicker of hope. He muttered, for the first time, sounding slightly unsettled, "Who dares interfere?" But the one who had come was not the police, not the army, not anyone he expected. It was someone, he thought, was already dead. From the shadows by the entrance, a figure staggered in, half her face smeared with blood, but still standing, still breathing, still holding a gun she'd taken from one of his men. Koy's eyes flew wide open, her heart pounded so violently it hurt. The woman spoke, in a trembling, but unbroken voice, like a bolt of lightning, striking through the darkness. "I'm not dead yet, you piece of shit." That woman was Maria. The echoing noise inside the warehouse died instantly, as if the entire world froze the moment Maria's silhouette appeared at the doorway. Blood streamed down her arm, her chest was covered with bullet wounds, yet she stood like a woman who had nothing left to lose, stood as someone who had been deceived, used, and broken far beyond what any human should endure. General Chonlatee turned to look at her. His expression shifted from coldness to burning, genuine displeasure. He clenched his jaw. "You are still alive?" Maria laughed softly, but it was the most painful laugh in the world. "I should have died already, but God probably wanted me to watch a demon die with my own eyes." Her words were soaked in blood and tears, but also filled with a vengeance she had carried for years. The tension thickened, heavy enough to explode the air. General Chonlatee raised his gun at her, a chilling smile curling at the corner of his lips. "Bold woman, do you think you can shoot me before I shoot you?" Maria raised her trembling gun. Her hand barely had any strength left, but her eyes were sharp. The eyes of someone ready to die for the truth. "I didn't come to survive. I came to stop you." Koy watched both of them, her heart pounding so violently it felt like it might burst out of her chest. She knew this was the only chance, maybe the last chance, to get John out before the uniformed demon pulled the trigger and killed all of them. Koy whispered to herself, voice shaking but firm, "I must save him. Now." She met Maria's eyes, and in that single fraction of a second, Maria nodded. She understood everything. Without a single word, the clash begins, no retreat for anyone. Everything erupted in 1 second, fast, explosive, violent like a detonating bomb. Maria fired first. General Chonlatee dodged, swift like a man who had fought 1,000 battles. The bullet grazed his shoulder by only a hair. Bang! The gunshot echoed through the warehouse. Koy used that moment, and sprinted toward John, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. Maria versus the general, a brutal mismatch. Maria was exhausted, bleeding endlessly, her hands trembled, her vision blurred, but she still tried to shoot, she still fought, she still stood, for truth, and for her child. General Chonlatee moved fast. He grabbed her wrist, twisting it until the bone nearly snapped. Crack! Maria screamed in agony. The gun slipped from her hand, clattering onto the floor. He kicked her so hard she flew into the wall. Blood spilled from her mouth. He laughed coldly, like he was playing with a human life as if it were a toy. Did you think you could do anything, woman? You've been nothing but a tool to us, your whole life. Tears streamed down Maria's face, but she didn't give up. She tried to stand again, even as her legs no longer felt like they belonged to her. She spoke in a faint voice, but her words struck like a curse. I may have been a tool, but today, I am not yours anymore. Koy, trying to save John through tears, Koy rushed behind her husband, hands shaking so badly she couldn't grip the chain properly. She called to him softly, John. Please, wake up. I'm here now. John forced his eyes open, sweat pouring down his face. Blood flowing down his collar, his voice was barely human. Koy. Tears rolled down Koy's cheeks. Just hold on. Please. Just a little longer. She used her knife to cut the chains, but they were too thick, too strong for a small blade. Koy gritted her teeth, striking again and again, even as her hands hurt from the vibration. Don't leave me. Please don't leave me. The general turned and saw Koy. He pointed his gun at her immediately, his gaze, cold, predatory, lethal. Stop, a woman like you has no right to save him. Koy froze, her heart stopping, but at that exact moment, Maria rose again. She pushed herself up, though she had no strength left to breathe. She grabbed a small metal pipe on the ground, and launched herself at General Chonlatee, knowing she would die for sure. She screamed with every ounce of life left inside her, Don't touch, Koy. And she struck his head, with full force. Crack, the general staggered back, blood pouring from his temple, but he didn't fall. He slowly turned back to her, his eyes shifting, from cold to pure savagery. He gripped the gun, raised it to Maria's heart, point blank, no hesitation, no humanity. Koy screamed, Maria. Maria only turned toward Koy, and smiled, a sorrowful, relieved smile, like someone who had already made peace with her fate. She whispered, so faint it was like a breath fading away, take care of my child, if I don't make it. And the next second, bang, the gunshot was thunder, a blow to the heart of everyone in the warehouse. Maria's body trembled, and collapsed, blood blooming across her chest. Koy screamed, a sound of a heart shattering beyond repair, no. Maria. Maria fell beside her, her breaths disappearing, her eyes slowly closing for the last time. Koy screamed again, a scream full of a pain no human should ever endure, but in that pain a new fire ignited, a vengeance hotter than hell, a fury greater than death. She turned toward General Chonlatee, her eyes transformed. No longer a victim, no longer weak, no longer willing to die, but a woman ready to kill the man who destroyed her family. The general smirked, speaking softly but clearly, only you left now, Koy. And tonight, she must fight, take revenge, and save her husband. All at once, the entire warehouse fell silent, so silent that Koy could hear Maria's blood dripping onto the concrete floor. The image of Maria taking her final breath in front of her was burned into Koy's mind like a curse. Her eyes, still half open, as if watching, as if entrusting something to Koy. Koy knelt beside Maria's lifeless body. Her whole body trembled, not from fear, but from rage. Her hands were stained with blood, Kang's blood, Maria's blood, her face streaked with tears and smeared with drying red, but her eyes were lit by something new, a flame ready to kill, a flame ready to burn everything down, even if it meant burning herself with it. General Chonlatee, the devil who still stood, he stepped forward slowly, each step heavy, steady, like a man who believed he controlled all fates in the room. The gun in his hand lifted, cold, calm. Firm, his voice was soft, too soft, and that softness was colder than winter steel. You're becoming annoying, you, that woman, and your dear husband. His eyes slid to Maria's corpse. He let out a quiet laugh, a laugh that trampled on the dead. Good, one down, two to go. Koy lifted her head slowly, tears poured down her face, but there was no fear in her expression anymore, only the face of a woman who was ready to kill, no matter the price. Koy moved, her hand slid toward the metal pipe lying near Maria's body. It was short, heavy, perfect for a woman who no longer feared death. The general noticed, and smirked. You think a metal rod can beat a gun? Koy didn't answer. She rose slowly, like someone climbing out of their own grave. Her eyes were bloodshot, feral, cornered but rabid, like a creature forced to the edge of survival. You killed my friend, you destroyed my family, you turned one woman's life into a lie, you ruined a child's future. Her voice shook, but carried a force that even the man with the gun felt in his bones. Tonight, I'll make you learn that a woman like me can kill too. General Chonlatee laughed. Then do it. He raised the gun and pulled the trigger. Bang! Koy ducked behind a wooden crate. The bullet grazed her upper arm, splattering blood. The sting was sharp, but it shocked her awake, fully alive, fully furious. The final duel began, with life as the wager. The general walked toward her, stepping over splintered wood, each step slow, deliberate, like a cat stalking prey. Koy hid behind a central pillar, panting, clutching the metal pipe so tightly, the veins bulged through her skin. His footsteps grew closer, closer, close. Enough she could smell, his expensive cologne. Koy whispered softly, like a vow carved from bone, for Maria, for John, for everyone you killed. Then she burst from behind the pillar, swinging the pipe with all the strength left in her shattered body. The general flinched, caught off guard for the smallest instant. He raised his arm to block. Crack! The metal slammed into his arm, sending shockwaves of pain through him. His aim broke for a moment. Koy seized that moment, launching herself at him, hitting, scratching, kneeing, fighting like a wild animal desperate to survive. The general staggered. He hadn't expected this level of ferocity, but the gap between them was still enormous. He drove his boot into her stomach. Thud! Koy flew backward, crashing onto the cold floor. She coughed blood immediately, the pain blinding, but she refused to die. Not tonight. The general stepped forward, crushing her hand beneath his boot, until the metal pipe clattered away. Crack! Koy cried out, but bit down hard on her tongue. To stop him from hearing her pain, he crouched, and grabbed her chin, squeezing so hard, her jaw almost snapped. Women like you are my favorite to kill. Koy stared up at him, her eyes full of hatred, hurt, fury, and the desperate love she still had for her dying husband. She slowly smiled, blood dripping from the corner of her mouth. It was a smile that made the general freeze. For half a heartbeat. You forgot something. He narrowed his eyes. And what's that? Koy whispered, low. Deadly, like something being unleashed. I didn't come alone. Before the general could process the words, a voice erupted behind him, carrying every last ounce of strength a man had left in his ruined body. Don't touch my wife. Clang! The iron chain wrapped around John's ankle was used like a whip, as he swung it with all his remaining strength, straight into the general's skull. The blow sent the general crashing into the wall. Blood poured from his forehead. His gun clattered across the floor. Koy turned toward John. He was standing, barely, covered in blood, barely conscious, but standing, because he loved her, because he needed to protect her. Because even on the verge of death, 14, he refused to let her die alone. John gasped for breath, glared at the general, with eyes full of fire, the kind of fire a man has only when he's ready to die for the woman he loves. Koy pushed herself to her feet, moving to stand beside him. Her body trembled, but her spirit was steel. She grasped his hand, both their hands soaked in blood, but that touch was more powerful than any words. They faced the general together, as he slowly tried to rise, like a monster refusing to die. Koy spoke softly, but clearly, more clearly than she had since this nightmare began. Tonight, we end this. Flames devoured the warehouse. Rising higher and higher, metal collapsed with deafening clatters, wood cracked and snapped, small explosions burst from inside, like a demon laughing from the heart of the fire. Koy dragged John through the thick smoke, half carrying, half pulling him, both of them stumbling over the trembling, overheated ground, but she never stopped, not even for a second, because now, she knew no one was coming, no miracle, no rescue. Their lives depended solely on themselves, where pain eats the heart alive. Once Koy managed to drag John out of the burning building, she collapsed beside him, coughing so violently that blood filled her throat. Her hands trembled, her chest ached like something was tearing it apart from the inside. Her vision blurred. John reached weakly for her hand, even though his injuries were far worse than hers, even though blood streamed down his neck and soaked his shirt. He still forced words from his fading voice. Koy. Run. Leave me. Here. Koy shook her head violently, tears spilling down her blood-stained, ash-covered face. No, you're not dying without me, not tonight. She bent over and cried, but never let go of his hand, afraid he would disappear, the same way Maria had. Another explosion erupted behind them. Boom, a rush of hot air blasted out, throwing ashes and debris across the yard, as if death itself was sprinting after them. Footsteps, someone approaching. Koy. Stay still. John whispered, as if sensing something. Koy froze, turning toward the swirling cloud of smoke around them. She gripped the piece of metal still in her hand, her heart pounding again, harder, faster. Footsteps drew closer, crunching on broken debris. Closer, closer. Koy forced herself to stand, even though her legs shook so violently she could barely keep balance. If this was the last enemy, she was ready, ready to fight, ready to die, until a shadow emerged from the smoke. Not a henchman, not a new demon, an Interpol tactical officer, rifle raised, armor glinting under the embers, with an entire team flooding in behind him. We received the emergency signal from Maria's tracker. She sent it before she lost consciousness. Koy froze, tears spilled again, but this time, not from fear, from heartbreak. Maria, even as she was dying, she still saved them. Maria, her last trace. When the officers moved in to secure the area, Maria's body was found not far from the exit, lying close to the door, as if she was trying to make sure Koy and John escaped safely. Officers lifted her body with care, with dignity. She may have been branded a criminal, tied to the network, but the police had seen everything. Tonight, they knew the truth. She had sacrificed more than anyone. Koy walked to her, kneeling beside Maria's cold, still hand. Her voice was barely a breath. You didn't die for nothing. I'll raise your son, for you. I promise. Her tears fell freely, falling onto Maria's hand, onto the ashes, onto the memory of a woman who loved the wrong man, who was used and betrayed, but who died to save others. John receives emergency treatment, the warehouse yard filled with sirens. Paramedics rushed to John the moment they reached him, checking his pulse, bandaging wounds, fitting an oxygen mask. He's losing too much blood, we need him in the ambulance now. Koy stumbled forward, trying to climb into the ambulance with him, but a paramedic grabbed her arm. You're severely injured too, you need treatment. Koy ripped her arm away. Tears burning in her eyes. He's my life, I'm going with him. The paramedic saw the desperation in her face, the kind you don't argue with. He nodded, and helped her up into the ambulance. As the doors closed, Koy held John's hand tightly. He forced his eyes open, barely conscious. Are we safe now? Koy lowered her forehead to his hand, her voice breaking. Yes. We're safe, but she's gone. Her tears fell onto his hand. John lifted his other hand weakly, to wipe them away. We'll take care of her, child, for her. Koy nodded, and John slipped into unconsciousness again. The ambulance sped into the night, carrying them away from the nightmare, toward a new life. A life they survived, because of one woman, whom the world would never remember, but who left a mark on both their hearts, forever.